Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Quinn McAtee, and I am the director of the BC Interior Resource Centre with the Huntington Society of Canada. I support individuals and families across the interior of BC who are impacted by Huntington's disease. I've been with HSC since 2023, and in my role, I work closely with families navigating the complex medical, financial, and emotional realities that come with HG. A big part of what we do is help connect people to resources, supports, and practical tools that can make daily life a little more manageable. That's why today's topic, the Canada Disability Benefit, is so important. For many individuals and families living with HD, financial strain is a very real concern. Accessing benefits like the CDB can open the door to additional financial support and other programs that can make a meaningful difference. At HSG, we believe families shouldn't have to navigate these systems alone. Providing clear information and trusted guidance is part of how we support our community, and today's session is one more step in that. Thank you for being here, and I'm looking forward to this important conversation. Before we move forward, I would like to give a little snapshot of our Family Services program structure at the Huntington Society of Canada. Our team includes a national director, 2 team leads, 1 national family services educator, 1 national child and youth practitioner, and 16 resource center directors located across Canada. Together, this national team works collaboratively to support individuals, children, youth, caregivers, and families affected by Huntington's disease. While we each serve different regions, we are connected across the country, sharing knowledge, resources, and expertise to ensure families receive consistent, informed, and compassionate support no matter where they live. As part of the Family Services program at the Huntington Society of Canada, we provide a range of supports to individuals and families affected by Huntington's disease. Some of the key things we do include providing direct support to individuals and families, running local, regional, and national support groups, offering information, education, and referrals, providing short-term counseling, engaging in individual advocacy, supporting local HSC chapters, and participating in multidisciplinary HG clinics. Our goal is to meet families where they are, whether that's navigating a new diagnosis, planning for the future, accessing financial support, or simply needing someone to talk to who understands the HG journey. All of these services are designed to help improve quality of life and ensure families feel supported and informed. As Resource Centre Directors with the Huntington Society of Canada, we are an integral part of your multidisciplinary medical team. We can be involved in care discussions and planning, and if we're not already connected to your clinic team, we can be brought in to support you. Please let us know when you or your family member would benefit from having an advocate or HD resource involved. We are here to help ensure your voice is heard and that you feel informed and supported. And our role extends beyond HD or movement disorder clinics. We support families in many aspects of living with Huntington's disease, including education, system navigation, financial resources, family dynamics, and future planning. We are part of your broader support system, not just your clinical appointment. On this slide, I just want to briefly highlight the Family Services team and our connection to disability programs such as Plan Institute. We are an integral part of many community care teams supporting individuals and families affected by HD. This can include collaboration with disability programs, financial planning supports, healthcare providers, and other community services. It's important to know that we can be involved whenever needed. We simply need to be invited into the conversation. Our role is to work alongside you and your broader care team to help ensure coordinated, informed, and person-centered support. To connect with an RCD, you can scan the QR code on the screen using your phone's camera. You're also welcome to copy down the link that's provided on the slide down below there. And you can also find this information directly on our website at Huntington Society of Canada. So that would be www.huntingtonsociety.ca. And you can navigate to the appropriate section after the session, and you'll be able to find an RCD that is in your area. And for convenience, we'll also be placing the direct link in the chat box at the end of the presentation, so you can easily access it then. And lastly, it is my pleasure to introduce our presenter, Liz Karen. Liz is a neurodivergent disabled person and a family caregiver for their wife and grandmother. They bring both lived experience and professional expertise to their work. They are the program manager at the Plan Institute, where they support the organization's free National Disability Planning Helpline Service, develop and facilitate events and resources, and connect with organizations across Canada. We're very grateful to have Liz with us today to share their knowledge and guide us through this important topic. Please join me in welcoming Liz.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Quinn, and welcome everybody to the webinar, whether you are joining us now live or watching the recording later on. So I'm just going to move my controls out of my way here. Okay, perfect. So, yes, I am here today to talk to you all about the Canada Disability Benefit, or CDB, which is a relatively new benefit that I can't wait to talk to you all about. So, a brief disclaimer that we provide before all of our webinar offerings is that the webinar or is that the material in this presentation and shared by Plan Institute staff, contractors, and volunteers is intended as a general source of information and should not be taken as specific professional advice. That being said, I've taken every effort to make sure that the material is correct, up to date. But of course, by the time you are watching or listening to this information, if you're accessing the recording, things may have changed. Of course, I do know quite a lot about the Canada Disability Benefit, as well as the disability tax credit, which is tied very closely to this benefit. So please ask me any questions that you have at the Q&A session at the end. And if I can't answer it, I'll direct you to the right resource or type of professional that can. So there's not too much more that I need to say about myself, other than that I'm really happy to be here. I've been working on our Canada Disability Benefit initiatives, working to get this benefit created since it was first announced in 2020, supporting the development of webinars to help educate people about this new benefit and supporting people to access it through our helpline. So excited to bring some of that knowledge to you today. So for our agenda today, I'll be talking for around 45, 50 minutes or so. I will be talking about the Canada Disability Benefit, so looking at what this benefit is, who is eligible for it, and then I'll be walking us through a few different payment examples, depending on what your situation is. Some will be more relevant than others, but hopefully it'll still be some good information. I will then talk about the application, so how you can actually apply for the CDB and what to expect once your application is successfully submitted. And then before we get into our question and answer period, I will talk about some more resources that are either self-guided or some supported ones that can help you take next steps. And then, of course, we'll have lots of time. We've got about 30 minutes planned for a question and answer session. So that will be a good time to ask anything that comes up. If you do have a question as I'm going through the presentation, I won't stop and answer them immediately. But you can put those in the chat anyways, and then we'll make sure when it's time for the Q&A that we'll go through the ones that have been submitted. At that time, if you want to, you can also turn on your video, unmute yourself, and you're welcome to ask your question verbally as well, which is a nice way of being able to do a webinar through Zoom meeting. All right, so going into the Canada Disability Benefit, I'll primarily be referring to it as the CDB. Um, Not to be confused with the other CDB, which is the Canada or the Child Disability Benefit. So just so we're very clear, when I say CDB, I mean the Canada Disability Benefit. Apologize in advance that a lot of these names are very similar. So at its core, the CDB is a monthly federal benefit that is intended to reduce the poverty of people with disabilities. So, this was the initial goal of creating this benefit when it was first announced in 2020. And especially when we think about how there's no income assistance program anywhere in Canada that brings people to what we would call the poverty line. So, knowing that there is quite a gap that needs to be filled. So, as of today, the Canada Disability Benefit provides up to $200 per month for working age people with disabilities who qualify. As you'll see, working age means 18 to 64 years old. I think we can probably all agree that we know folks who are working younger and older than that, but that's the cap that the government has set out. So, if somebody was eligible for the maximum benefit, they would get $2,400 per year. So, with the CDB being a source of income for individuals, it's treated differently depending on what program somebody might be receiving. So, we do know that if you are getting any sort of funded supports for non-government programs, the CDB may or may not be counted as income. So, it's really important that you check with your benefit or program provider just to get their explicit policy so you can make the best decision for yourself. Thankfully, for all federal benefits, the CDB is exempt. This includes exempt from your eligibility for things like old age security, the guaranteed income supplement, Canada Pension Plan as well, although that doesn't really care too much about your earnings. But yes, any federal programs, they will not count the CDB as income. When we look at the provincial and territorial income assistance programs that exist, almost all of them have also completely exempted the CDB. This means that somebody could receive that full $200 a month and still get the maximum amount of money that they would otherwise be allowed to receive from that income assistance program. The only exception is Alberta, and I will talk more about that in a few minutes. It's also important that if you or someone you know is living in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador, that the CDB complements another monthly payment amount that is specific to people within that province. All right. So diving into Alberta. So in Alberta, if somebody is receiving the income assistance program, currently known as AISH or the Assured Income for the Severely Handicapped, they're also establishing a new program called ADAP. But regardless of what program somebody has been accepted into, they are not exempting the CDB. So this means that if somebody was approved for that $200 a month benefit from the federal government, that they would still receive the same amount of money that they are already getting per month from the Alberta benefit, but $200 of that would come from the federal government, whereas the Alberta government would be paying $200 less. So there's not really a net overall benefit to you. It's more of a benefit for the provincial government. There is a lot of advocacy that's happening to try and change that. But unfortunately, that is the situation right now. We do also know that for folks that are receiving the income assistance program in Alberta, that everyone is required to apply for the disability tax credit and then to apply for the Canada Disability Benefit, even if you had been denied in prior years before they made this announcement. So if you have more questions about that, I can elaborate after, but that's the situation in Alberta. Now, for people that are in Newfoundland and Labrador, we've got some opposed really good news that we have there. So, for people that are living in Newfoundland and Labrador, they can get an additional monthly benefit amount of up to $400 per month or $4,800 a year. And this is an automatic benefit that people get if they meet the eligibility criteria, which is that they're between the ages of 18 to 64, are approved for the disability tax credit, they file their income taxes, and they meet the household income requirements. So somebody does have to file their taxes and have that be currently up to date in order to be eligible for this benefit. There is no other way of accessing it without filing your taxes. And then for people who are between the ages of 18 to 49 and have a registered disability savings plan, they might be eligible for an additional yearly contribution of $1,200 into their RDSP account. I'm not going to be talking more about the RDSP for my presentation, but if you do have questions about the RDSP, I am happy to answer those in the Q&A. So now that we have a good understanding of what the CDB could impact in terms of other benefits or programs that you might be receiving support from, let's talk about who can apply for the CDB. So I've listed the eligibility criteria out on this slide, and then I'll go through each of these individually. So to summarize, you can apply for the CDB if you are considered a resident of Canada for tax filing purposes. You are of working age, so eligibility starts the month you turn 18. It ends the month you turn 65. You must be approved currently for the disability tax credit. You must have filed your income taxes for the most recent year, and of course, meet the household income thresholds to qualify. So, diving into each of those eligibility considerations a bit deeper now. So, applicants must be a resident of Canada for tax filing purposes. Typically, this is somebody who lives in Canada for more than 183 days in a year and has residential ties to Canada. Some examples of this would be living and working in the country, having important relationships with people in Canada, such as maybe a romantic partner, family members, things like that, and having a Canadian passport. Again, pretty straightforward with the age. Eligibility starts the month you turn 18 and ends the month you turn 65. The only way that somebody age 65 could get this benefit would be if they were eligible when they were 64 and were applying for retroactive payments. They must also be currently approved for the disability tax credit, DTC. This is also known as the T2201 form, which is available through and applied to at the Canada Revenue Agency. So we have actually offered a DTC webinar with Huntington Society a few weeks ago, I believe it was. And so if you want access to that recording, please feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to share that with you. Plan Institute does also offer a monthly webinar on the DTC, so lots of opportunity to get some additional information. So just to be very brief with this, because many of you may already have the DTC or in the process of getting it. So just to say that the DTC is a non-refundable tax credit at its core. It's available to people of any age who have serious restrictions caused by mental and or physical disabilities. And these disabilities and the symptoms that they bring have lasted or are expected to last at least 1 year. While the credit can help people with disabilities and their family members pay less income tax by that, using it when you file your income tax return, the DTC also gives access to other benefits because it has really become the main federal way of recognizing disability. We know that this continues to be probably the biggest barrier to accessing the Canada Disability Benefit, as well as several other now DTC tied benefits. So our organization does offer free support in accessing the DTC, and we'd love for you to reach out and can provide more support with that. So when we look at the CDB, we have something called a payment or the yearly payment period. So this is July 1st through June 30th. So the way in which you're assessed for this benefit doesn't go by calendar year, it goes by this yearly payment period. So in order to know how much money you can get during this yearly period, so for example, how much money you can get from July 1st, 2026 through June 30th, 2027, the government is going to look at your and your spouse or common law partners, if you have one, income tax return for the previous tax year, which in this example would be the 2025 income tax year. As well, the CDB payment is based on the adjusted net family income of the applicant. This includes, as I mentioned, the income of their spouse or common law partner if they have one. So without getting into the very specific ways of calculating your adjusted net family income, Basically, to summarize this, your net income is found by, or your adjusted net family income is taking all sources of income that you have minus any ones that are already exempt. As well, the CDB, or I guess the income levels that the CDB is looking at, does not include any money that you have received from a registered disability savings plan payment or from a universal child care benefit. So those would be not included in the calculations. And don't worry, I will be sharing what those income thresholds are. I'm just going to do that in a moment because it's going to take at least a few minutes to get through. So let's say you are approved for the Canada Disability Benefit. Well, if that's the case, payments are going to be sent on the third Thursday of each month. If you're approved and you qualify for payments, you're going to be paid in the month after your application is approved. So let's say you're approved April 2026, you'll start receiving your payments in May 2026. If your total yearly payment for the payment year, again, July 1st through June 30th, if that total yearly payment that you're eligible for is $240 or less, which is $20 or less per month, then instead of getting monthly payments of that amount, you would just receive one lump sum payment instead of that. You can also pause or cancel your CDB payments anytime. To do this, you basically ask to do so in writing. It's important to know, though, that you will not be eligible for payments retroactively for the period you decided to pause or stop accepting payments once you've already been approved. So, something to keep in mind if you are wanting to do that and to better understand whether that would be actually beneficial for you. So now getting into the payment calculations, and that'll go into the payment examples because this can feel quite complicated and I'm not totally surprised. A lot of government benefits can be a bit complicated. So let's go into this further. So again, the first thing that somebody would do would be to find your adjusted net family income. Then we look at the definitions that the government has set out for the thresholds because there are two thresholds plus an exemption. So we'll go through each of these individually and then we will get to see in practice how this is applied. So the first thing we need to know is the income threshold. So what the government is calling the income threshold is the income where if you earn at or below that amount, you will get the full $200 per month. The next threshold we have is the phase out income threshold. So with this threshold, you can still get some of the CDB as long as your income is not higher than the phase out income threshold. If your income is higher than that, you will get no benefit. And if you or your spouse or common law partner earn some or all of your money from employment, then up to $10,000 for a single person and up to $14,000 for a couple is also allowed and wouldn't count towards your income that's used in these calculations. So to summarize, the income threshold is the first level where if you make at or below that, you get the full $200. You can still receive some of that money up until you hit that phase out income threshold. And if you or your partner get some or all of your money from employment, there is a reduction in how much of your income is used. So now I'm going to go into the income thresholds. So the way the government has set it out is that there are three different scenarios. So they have different income thresholds, phase out income thresholds, and the working income exemption is slightly different depending on whether you are a single person, you are somebody in a relationship where only one of you is eligible for the Canada Disability Benefit, and then the third scenario is where you are in a relationship and both of you are disability tax credit approved and could be eligible for the CDB. So the first example where we have a single person, the income threshold to receive that maximum $200 a month is $23,000. For any dollar you have over that $23,000, your amount of money you can receive from the CDB per year is reduced 20% or 20 cents on the dollar. And as long as your income is not higher than $35,000, you can receive some of the CDB. There's also, again, that maximum working income exemption. So that's $10,000. That would basically make it so that your income threshold would be $33,000 and the phase out income threshold, $45,000. But again, don't worry too much about remembering all of this. I will be going through some examples, which will hopefully make this a bit clearer. When we look at a couple where one person is eligible for the CDB, that income threshold is $32,500. We can see that the reduction rate is also 20% or 20 cents on the dollar over. Here we can see that the phase out income threshold is higher. This is now $44,500. And we can also see that for people in a relationship, the working income exemption has increased slightly. So now there's an allowable $14,000. And finally, before we jump into those payment examples, I will give the thresholds for a couple where two people are eligible for the CDB. So in this scenario, the income threshold is the same at $32,500, but the reduction rate per dollar above the income threshold is reduced to only 10% or 10 cents per dollar over. The phase out income threshold has also increased in this scenario to $56,500, but the maximum working income exemption has remained the same at $14,000. So now on the screen, we can just see them all side by side and have that comparison. If you are curious to know how much you might be eligible to get through the CDB, the Government of Canada does have what they are calling the Canada Disability Benefit Estimator. So in the PDF slideshow that you're going to have access to after the webinar finishes, you'll get an email with a link to this folder. You will be able to click directly on this link. You could also just go online to whatever search engine you use and type in Government of Canada's Canada Disability Estimator or some rendition of that, and it should come up. Okay, so going into four payment calculations and their example scenarios. So the first situation we have here is for Aja. So Aja receives $17,802 per year in provincial social assistance and has no other income. Her adjusted family net income, this is an easy one, is then $17,802. We can see that because Aja's income is below the income threshold of $23,000, she's going to receive that full benefit of $200 per month. Another scenario where we have a single person. So this example is for Fareed. So Fareed earns $35,000 per year after taxes in employment income, and he has no other income. His adjusted family net income is therefore $35,000. Now, while calculating Fareed's CDB payment, we'll see the working income exemption and the reduction rate for his income that is $2,000 above the threshold, and we'll find that he will receive just under $167 per month as his benefit amount. So we can see how that's calculated by seeing the adjusted net family income at $35,000. Because Fareed earns more than $10,000 in employment income, that qualifies him for that full working income exemption. So we get to subtract $10,000 from that adjusted income. This means that the income that is considered for the calculations of this benefit is only $25,000. We can see that's $2,000 above the singles threshold. With that, we also know that for every $1 over the income threshold, your yearly payment amount is reduced by 20 cents. So when we calculate that out, the annual payment is reduced by $400. So the maximum CDB payment that Fareed will receive is $2,000 a year. Dividing that out by 12, that's just under $167 per month. Okay. The next scenario that we have here is for a couple where one person is eligible for the CDB. So Liana and Tandy live together with their young daughter. Tandy is eligible for the Canada Disability Benefit, while Liana is not. Liana earns $45,000 a year after tax from her job. The family also receives $8,000 from the Canada Child Benefit, which is not included in the couple's adjusted family net income because it is a universal childcare benefit. Therefore, we can see that the adjusted family net income is $45,000. Now, even though Liana is not eligible herself, the working income exemption for couples is still going to be applied. So we're going to go ahead and subtract that $14,000, which brings the income considered down to $31,000. So since the couple's income after the exemption is under the couple threshold, Tondi will receive the full benefit of $2,400 a year or $200 per month. All right. And then the last payment calculation example scenario that I have here is for a couple where both people are eligible for the CDB. And then we'll start talking about how to apply for this benefit. So Emmett and Finnegan are a married couple in their early 60s. Both are eligible for the Canada Disability Benefit. Emmett is self-employed and earns $5,000. Finnegan receives $15,000 in Canada Pension Plan disability benefits. He also receives $25,000 from a workplace disability insurance plan that is considered taxable income. So combined, Emmett and Finnegan's adjusted family net income is $45,000. So, since Emmett earns less than the working income exemption for couples, his income of $5,000 is exempt, but you can't reduce this by the full $14,000 because it's based specifically on that employment income. This means their income considered is $40,000. It's $7,500 above the threshold. Their income after that exemption, oh, sorry, I just said that. For a couple who are both eligible, the yearly payment amount is reduced by 10 cents for every dollar over the threshold, reducing it by $7.50 a year. And we can see that this means that each Emmett and Finnegan will both get that monthly CDB payment of just under $140 a month. And combined, we can see that it's $275 per month for the household. All right. Hopefully that was the most complex part of the webinar for today. Thank you for hanging in there as we navigated that. So now to talk about the application and next steps. So there are 4 different ways that you can apply for the CDB. The first way is by applying in person at a Service Canada location. You can apply by phone. The phone number is 1-833-486-3007. For those that use a teletypewriter, there's a number for that as well. Fairly similar, but I'll just read that out in case you want that. So that's 1-833-467-2700. You can also go online to the Government of Canada's website and register to use the video relay service through Canada VRS. Outside of that, you can also apply directly online. It's a pretty quick application page. And then the last way that you can apply is by mail. And this would be by completing the application and sending it to the Service Canada Centre in Quebec. All right, so when you're going through that application, there are different requirements depending on whether you are applying as an individual or as a legal representative for another person. When you're applying as an individual, the application is going to ask for some basic personal information. So this is going to include your name, date of birth, social insurance number, address, and your residential status in Canada. It is also going to ask you information about your net income, but this is optional. So you don't have to provide this when you're going through the application. If you did want to include this, this would be by finding your net income on line 23,600 of your most recent notice of assessment. While providing this information will help to speed up the application, it's not required. And if you do leave that question blank, then the CRA is just going to share that information with Service Canada, and they'll be able to get that directly. The application is also going to ask where you want to receive your CDB payments. You can decide to receive your payments in two ways, either by direct deposit right into your bank account, which requires your banking information, or you can request it to be mailed to you by check. Also, if you already have payment information on file with Service Canada, you can request to use the same payment method for the CDB. If you are somebody who wants help to apply, you can choose to authorize a person to help you communicate with Service Canada about your benefit. Your authorized person will be able to ask about the status of your benefit, get your monthly payment information, including the amount and date of your payments. They can ask to have letters reissued by mail, and they can change your address. However, your authorized person is not going to be able to apply for the benefit for you, change your banking information or payment method, ask for a formal reconsideration, or stop your benefit. If you would like to authorize someone, you need to submit a completed form, which is called the Consent to Communicate Information to an Authorized Person form. I know, very catchy name. And that will be submitted to Service Canada. You can drop it off in person at a Service Canada location, or you can mail it to the CDB Processing Center at PO Box 60, Boucherville, Quebec. Now, if you are needing to help somebody apply, or you are someone who will need help to apply by a legal representative, that is also an option. The same information is going to be needed for as if you were applying for an individual, but this application is also going to require information about the representative. So this is going to require proof of legal authority to act on behalf of the applicant. Now, depending on where you live in Canada, there are a variety of ways that somebody could be granted legal representation to help you with your financial affairs. I've listed some of those examples on screen here, but it's not exhaustive. There are definitely other ones that work as well. So this could include having a representation agreement that grants authority to manage financial affairs. This could be a court order that appoints a person, agency, or institution as a trustee, comite, or guardian. This could be a certificate of guardianship, a continuing or springing power of attorney, a dated letter or notice from the public trustee or public curator that contains the required information, or confirmation of the tutorship. So lots of different options and different terminology. Again, a lot of this is dependent on where somebody lives because the legislation that regulates the personal planning and estate planning documents people may have will vary depending on where you live. So as well, within this application, as I mentioned, there's going to be additional information required. So proof of legal representation authority, also a copy of the representative's government issued ID. This ID does have to be valid and not expired, and it must show that person's full name and their date of birth. And if applying as a designated organization representative, you do need to provide proof of that authority as well. So some examples of government issued ID that are acceptable for Service Canada. This would include things like a provincial or territorial driver's license or ID card, a Canadian passport or a foreign passport. You just have to keep in mind that if that passport is not in English or in French, it must have a professionally translated version of that passport included in the application. You could also provide a permanent resident card, a provincial or territorial birth certificate, or a foreign birth certificate as well would all work. So once you have completed the application process, again, I probably have spent more time explaining the application process than it would take to submit, especially if you're doing it online, because a lot of that information is fairly quick to get through. So Service Canada does have a designated call center for anyone who might have questions about the CDB and the application process. You could also call if you wanted to find out the status of your application or the application of someone that you've supported. So again, that phone number is 1-833-486-3007. You can also on the Government of Canada website request a callback or again, register for the Canada Video Relay Service, use TTY, and then there is an international number as well. So once you've gone ahead, you've submitted the application, you've applied, the expected wait time for a decision differs depending on how you applied. If you applied as an individual, it'll take about 28 calendar days to get a decision. If you're applying as a representative, it'll take about 49 days. And that is because they have to go through that extra step of verifying the guardian's identity as well as the authority of them to apply on behalf of another person. If you disagree with the decision, so this could be you were denied and don't think you should be, you could have been approved, but maybe you didn't get the right payment amount, or potentially there was another issue that experienced, you do have the option of submitting a request within 180 days of the date on your decision letter to basically request a reconsideration. So if you are a legal representative, you can do that on somebody's behalf. If you do have to submit your request after 180 days from that decision letter has passed, you do need to explain what prevented you from submitting it sooner. Now, after you've submitted that reconsideration request, this is going to be reviewed by Service Canada. It's going to be reviewed by someone who was not involved in your original application, so it'll basically be reviewed with fresh eyes. If your request for reconsideration is denied, you do have one more step that you can take. This would be contacting the Social Security Tribunal of Canada and appeal to them. They will then notify Service Canada of your appeal and support you through those next steps. All of these forms and instructions are available on the Government of Canada's CDB after you apply webpage. Okay, so after approval, let's say, yay, you applied, you've been approved, you're successful, fantastic. You don't have to reapply again. Once you have gone through the process of submitting your application, if you are approved, you'll automatically be reassessed every single year to confirm whether you're eligible for the next payment period. It's really important to make sure that you and if you have a spouse or common law partner, that they also file their income tax return on time every single year. That will make sure that you don't have any delays and that you're assessed for the correct amount of the benefit. If, on the other hand, you are denied, so let's say your income was too high for 1 year, for example, you would then need to reapply once you meet the eligibility criteria. So just to note that if you're approved, don't have to apply again. If you're denied, you will have to apply again once you meet that eligibility criteria. So, for some of you who maybe have already been approved for the disability tax credit, you may be wondering what happens if your disability tax credit approval status ends. So, it's pretty common right now that most people who are approved for the disability tax credit, they're typically only approved for like 3 to 5 years at a time. In some instances, people are given an approval for the DTC for what we call all future years. That's basically a permanent DTC approval where you would never have to reapply again unless the CRA requests you to do so. So it is common. People may have to reapply. I was recently supporting a friend, and she was telling me that she didn't even realize her DTC had expired at the end of 2023. So I was asking for next steps and how to navigate applying for the DTC again. But let's say the same thing happens to you. Maybe you forgot that your DTC expired at the end of 2024, for example. Maybe your condition has improved and you no longer qualify. Or perhaps you have issues with your medical practitioner. Maybe your family doctor retired and you haven't been able to get another one. Lots of different reasons why somebody may have a lapse in their DTC approval. So it is important to know that you can start receiving the Canada Disability Benefit again if your DTC becomes reapproved in the future. This is because the Canada Disability Benefit is paid retroactively for the last 24 months from when it started. So even if your DTC has expired currently, there is the option of not missing out on any payments as long as your DTC is reapproved by June 2027, which would be 2 years or 24 months after eligibility began for the CDB. What happens though if your DTC status lapses is that you're going to stop receiving CDB payments until your DTC is approved again. While Service Canada is going to get an update from the CRA that your disability tax credit approval has expired, you may want to be proactive and let them know ahead of time and just say, hey, by the way, my DTC has expired. Please stop payments. This is because if you accidentally receive Canada disability payments, even after your disability tax credit has expired, so let's say your DTC was approved up until the end of 2025, we're now into 2026. You don't have the DTC, but maybe Service Canada didn't get that updated right away. And so you received your payment in January. If you received a payment, you would have to repay that amount. So telling Service Canada right away, like January 1st, well, that's a holiday. So let's say January 2nd or 3rd, contacting Service Canada and saying, by the way, my DTC is expired. I want to make sure you're not going to be issuing me payments this month, just so you don't have the hassle, especially knowing that once you are approved again, you can get those retroactive payments back. An overpayment, which is basically what I was just talking about, is when someone is given more of the benefit than they were eligible to receive. If an overpayment is caused by error, no penalties will be applied. So, in that example that I just gave, if you received that money but your DTC was expired, you will have to still repay that money, but you're not going to be penalized. There's going to be no other consequences because it was an honest mistake. If, however, somebody has applied giving knowingly false information or they have received the benefit knowing you're not eligible to receive it, then there could be a penalty of some kind. I also want to make sure to give the very important reminder to update Service Canada right away anytime your situation changes. This includes changes to your relationship status. Either you become single or you become somebody who's in a common law or married relationship, if your residential status in Canada changes, as well as your mailing address and other contact information, so your phone, your email address, and if your banking information changes. Because once you are approved for the CDB, you do not have to reapply again. You're not going to have those same regular touch points of updating your contact information or things like that. So, really good to just keep that in your mind that if something changes, let them know. This will help avoid any delays, having payments sent to an incorrect bank account or an incorrect mailing address, or some other issue that may come up. Now, the CDB payment is not taxable. This is something that can be spent on anything that you want to use up to $200 a month for. So, for a lot of folks, this is going to be just used to help cover monthly expenses, knowing how high the cost of living is. For other folks, this may be money that is in excess of what you need. And so potentially this could be used to fund your registered disability savings plan and potentially receive a matching contribution of up to $600 from the government. You could also use some or all of your CDB money to save up for a big expense like a new bed, a vacation. Unfortunately, sometimes those are around the same cost depending on where you're going. This could also be used to pay off any debts or loans that you might have. So really, as much as freedom as you want, you can have with the CDB. And lastly, before I wrap up and open up for a question and answer session, I just want to share some more resources that might be helpful to you or someone that you're supporting. So, Plan Institute, which is the national nonprofit organization that I work with, we provide free support to people all across Canada in accessing and understanding different disability benefits and programs, but also a whole variety of disability planning topics. So, the biggest resources that I can share with you are all of our websites. So, we have planinstitute.ca, which is our main website. This is a place that you can find downloadable resources on disability benefits navigation support. You'll find our listings for our upcoming webinars, many of which are interpreted and available in languages like ASL, Punjabi, Mandarin, Arabic, Spanish, and Farsi, I believe is the other one that we have interpreted already. You'll also find our BC lawyer referral list if you're local to the province, and some publications that you can download or access. We do also offer CanadaDisabilityBenefit.ca, which really is a resource hub for all things CDB, as well as a lot of information and resources on the disability tax credit as well. And then, of course, RDSP.com, our one-stop shop for all things RDSP, including a tutorial, an RDSP calculator, and a downloadable RDSP step-by-step guide. As I mentioned, and what I was just saying, the webinars that we have regularly include two levels of RDSP webinars, one that's really basic, another one that's a bit more advanced about managing and really making the most benefit of the RDSP. The DTC, Wills Trust and Estate Planning webinar as well. And then we often are doing custom webinars and workshops like what we're doing right now with Huntington Society. We do also offer a self-paced personal support network facilitation course, and we have an annual caregivers retreat for folks that are in British Columbia, which is a weekend respite opportunity for primary caregivers of people with disabilities. And if there is one thing to take away from the webinar today, it is that we offer a free national disability planning helpline service that you can access and be connected to one of our helpline advisors within a few days. Currently, our response time is up to 8 business days, but our advisors are working as hard as they can to respond as quickly, effectively, and accurately to your questions and concerns. We can also provide free support in applying for the disability tax credit and Canada Disability Benefit, including supporting with those application forms, helping communicate with your medical practitioner. But we also support with a whole host of other topics. If it has anything to do with disability, reach out and we will either support you directly or we'll help you find the right resource or type of professional or maybe another organization that can provide the support that you're looking for. That phone number to call into our helpline is 1-844 311 7526. And the email address is helpline@planinstitute.ca. We do also offer free video conferencing, ASL, and other language interpreted supports upon request in any language that you can think of. So please feel free to share the word. And with that, I have done a lot of talking. So now it is time for you to get additional answers. So we'll jump into our question and answer session. So this is a great opportunity to let me know if there's something that you want explained further, if you need some guidance for your situation, or if there is something else that you want to ask. And because I want to stop my screen sharing so that if any of you want to turn on your camera or ask your questions verbally, of course, you can also type them into the chat. You can do so. But just wanted to thank you so much for attending and for this opportunity. Okay, going to go ahead and stop my screen sharing now, and then I will also stop the recording.